battling each other. You gotta look back at it when time passes, and you look and you say, you said things that agitated each other to the point that you might have wanted to run into.
50 Cent just leaked new evidence about Tupac and Biggie's murders, and it completely flips the story we thought we knew. His Netflix series digs into gang alliances, industry pressure, never-seen police audio from Kudi, and insiders claiming the East-West feud was actually a proxy war with real money behind it. And once those hidden recordings surface, the murders stop looking like random street hits and start looking orchestrated. The revelation. What if I told you that after nearly 3 decades of silence, mysteries, and unanswered questions, one of hip-hop's most powerful voices has decided to pull back the curtain on 2 of the most infamous unsolved murders in music history? That's right, we're talking about Curtis 50 Cent Jackson. And he's not holding anything back. On December 2, 2025, 50 Cent released a bombshell Netflix docu-series that's sending shockwaves through the hip-hop community and beyond as it dives deep into the murders of Tupac Shakur and the Notorious B.I.G, 2 titans whose lives were cut devastatingly short in the prime of their careers. It's been 28 years since Christopher Wallace, known to the world as Biggie Smalls, or the Notorious B.I.G, was gunned down in Los Angeles on March 9, 1997. And just 6 months before that tragic night, on September 13, 1996, Tupac Shakur, the poetic revolutionary, the voice of a generation, died from wounds sustained in a Las Vegas drive-by shooting. These weren't just rappers. These were cultural icons, voices that spoke for millions. Artists whose influence transcended music and touched every corner of society. For literally decades, and I mean decades, fans have been in the comments, the Reddit threads, the Discord servers, the group chats, anywhere and everywhere trying to figure out what actually went down on those nights. Who was the shooter? Was it gang-related, or was there some industry executive puppet master pulling strings behind the scenes? The theories have been absolutely wild. The speculation has been non-stop, and the truth has been more elusive than getting verified on Twitter until right now. Enter 50 Cent, executive producer extraordinaire, who has never been one to shy away from controversy or difficult conversations. Through his multi-part Netflix series, he's compiled testimonies from former music industry insiders, archival materials that have never seen the light of day, and audio recordings that paint a chilling picture of what transpired during that volatile period in hip-hop history. This isn't just another documentary rehashing old news. This is a deep, unflinching examination that features people who were actually there, who witnessed events firsthand, and who are now finally ready to speak their truth. The docu-series doesn't waste any time getting into the meat of the matter. In Episode 2, which focuses specifically on the murders, we're introduced to a narrative that's been whispered about in back rooms and speculated about in countless articles, but never quite laid out with this level of detail and conviction. The series presents testimonies from Kirk Burroughs, a label co-founder, Mark Curry, a rapper who was signed to Bad Boy Records, and Roxanne Johnson, the ex-wife of Craig Mack. These aren't out looking in. These are people who were embedded in the industry, who saw the machinery at work, who understood the pressures, the rivalries, and the dangerous games being played. One of the most striking elements that the documentary explores is how the rivalries between East Coast and West Coast labels escalated into something far more sinister. A proxy war involving actual street gangs. We're talking about the Crips allegedly aligning with East Coast interests and the Bloods with the West Coast. This wasn't just a rap beef playing out in diss tracks and magazine interviews. This was real-world violence with real-world consequences. And the documentary argues persuasively that these gang affiliations played a crucial role in both deaths. Kirk Burroughs, reflecting with the wisdom and perspective that comes with age and distance from those turbulent times, makes a particularly haunting observation in the series. He suggests that with mature reflection, it becomes clear there was orchestration behind Tupac's death. He describes how after Tupac's shooting in Las Vegas, there were significant pressures within the industry to continue business as usual, to keep promoting albums, to keep the money machine running. Specifically, he recounts how Biggie was pushed, some might even say coerced, to travel to Los Angeles to promote his album Life After Death. Despite the obvious and present dangers that existed in what was essentially enemy territory at the height of the coastal tension.
The Life After Death, double CD dropping March 25th.
Let that sink in for a second. Biggie, according to multiple people interviewed in the documentary, didn't want to go to LA. He understood the assignment. He knew the vibes were off. He knew the situation was dangerous. He wasn't out here being reckless, But the industry, the label, the promotional schedule, all of those business concerns overrode basic safety protocols. Burroughs' testimony in the series literally argues that Biggie was ushered to his death, that the industry's obsession with profit margins and streaming numbers, well, album sales back then, created the perfect storm that made that tragic night in Los Angeles inevitable. But here's where things get even more intense, even more concrete. The docu series doesn't just rely on reflections and analysis from industry insiders. It presents what it frames as hard evidence, specifically audio recordings from Dwayne Keith D. Davis, a member of the Southside Crips who was arrested in 2023 and is currently awaiting trial for Tupac's murder. This audio, recorded during a 2008 proffer session with police, essentially a protected interview where suspects can speak somewhat freely in exchange for immunity, provides a chilling first-person account of the night Tupac was shot. In these recordings, which have now become central evidence in Davis's murder case, he describes in vivid detail what happened on September 7, 1996. He talks about how earlier that evening there had been a physical altercation at the MGM Grand Casino. Tupac and members of his entourage, including Death Row Records CEO Suge Knight, had gotten into a violent confrontation with Orlando Anderson, who happened to be Keith D's nephew. This wasn't a random beef. Anderson was allegedly involved in an earlier robbery of a Death Row affiliate. And when Tupac spotted him at the casino, things escalated quickly and violently.
Strong dude, yo. I know dude. You know what I'm saying?
Very
He's real strong. So when it was like he got shot, I was just more like, again? You know what I'm saying? He always getting shot or shot at. He gonna pull through this one again, make a few records about it, and it's gonna be over. You know what I'm saying? But when he died, I was just...
What Davis describes next is the anatomy of a revenge killing. He details how after the MGM Grand incident, he and his crew, including Anderson, DeAndre, Big Dre Smith, and driver Terrence T. Brown, armed themselves and went looking for retaliation. They initially positioned themselves at Club 662, where Tupac was scheduled to perform that night, waiting with weapons for an opportunity that never came. After about 90 minutes of waiting, they left for a liquor store. And that's when fate intervened in the cruelest way possible. They spotted Tupac's black BMW with the rapper visibly hanging out the passenger window, larger than life, full of energy and charisma. Davis describes executing a U-turn to pull alongside the vehicle at the intersection of East Flamingo Road and Koval Lane. And here's where his account becomes particularly specific and damaging. From the front passenger seat, Davis admits to pulling out a .40 caliber Glock and passing it toward the back seat. According to his own words, Anderson said, "Give it here. I'll shoot," before allegedly firing multiple rounds at the BMW. Tupac was struck 4 times. Twice in the chest with one bullet piercing his lung, once in the arm, and once in the thigh. Suge Knight, who was driving, sustained a graze wound to the head. The Cadillac sped away into the night, and 6 days later on September 13, 1996, Tupac Shakur died from respiratory failure and cardiac arrest. The voice was silenced. The revolution was cut short and hip-hop would never be the same. Now Davis claims in his audio confession that this hit was tied to a bounty, that there was money on the table for taking out both Tupac and Suge Knight. He states that only half the promised payment was received since Knight survived the attack. This allegation alone raises profound questions about who might have funded such a bounty, who had the motive and means to put a price on these men's heads, and whether this violence was orchestrated at levels far beyond street-level gang disputes. The documentary makes clear that this wasn't just random gang violence. This was calculated. This was planned. And according to the testimonies and evidence presented, this was part of a larger pattern of escalating violence that had its roots in industry rivalries, territorial disputes, and the toxic mixture of ego, money, and power that defined that era of hip-hop. The series argues compellingly that what started as artistic competition and label rivalry evolved into something far more dangerous. A situation where the line, where real bullets were being fired, and where the consequences were irrevocable and devastating. The night everything changed. Let's rewind and really examine what happened on that fateful night in Las Vegas. Because understanding the sequence of events is crucial to comprehending how a night that should have been a celebration turned into one of the darkest moments in music history. September 7, 1996 started out as what many thought would be an incredible evening. Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet, was fighting Bruce Seldon at the MGM Grand. It was a heavyweight championship bout, the kind of event that draws celebrities, high rollers, anyone who wants to be part of something big. Tupac Shakur attended the fight with Suge Knight and members of the Outlaws. His rap group comprised of childhood friends and family members who were fiercely loyal to him. The fight itself was anticlimactic. Tyson won in just 109 seconds of the first round. But what happened after would change everything. As Tupac and his entourage were making their way through the MGM Grand's casino lobby, Trayvon Trey Lane, a member of the mob Piru Bloods affiliated with Death Row Records, spotted Orlando Anderson. Now, this wasn't just a random sighting. Earlier in the year, Anderson, a Southside Compton Crip, had allegedly been involved in an altercation at a Foot Locker in Lakewood, California, where he and others had robbed Lane of a gold Death Row medallion. This robbery had escalated tensions between the Crips and Bloods factions that were tied whether directly or peripherally to the hip-hop industry. When Lane pointed out Anderson to Tupac, indicating this was the guy who had disrespected Death Row, Tupac's response was immediate and violent. Surveillance footage from the MGM Grand, which has been analyzed exhaustively in documentaries and investigations, shows Tupac landing the first punch, knocking Anderson to the ground. Suge Knight and others from Tupac's crew quickly joined in, and for a brief but intense moment Anderson was on the receiving end of a brutal beatdown. Security eventually broke it up and both parties went their separate ways. But here's the thing about street code, about gang culture, about that world where respect is everything and disrespect demands response. This public humiliation of Anderson wasn't going to go unanswered.